sit down.
Whatever work we should do.
All right, and Senator Murphy is right. Train broke down. Awesome.
The parents, you guys want to come up here too? Stand.
God, I feel powerful with all you guys beside me. Great to see you here. You can stand wherever you want to. They just want to be in the camera shot. You want? You guys ready? All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And Senator Murphy is coming in. So, Chris, we're going to get started. And there's Maggie, too. Senator Murphy and Senator Hessen. This is my team.
All right. Look at this. Wow.
All right.
Let them take center stage.
No kidding. All right. Well, thank you all so much for being here. And I especially want to thank the Heung and Morrison families, and especially Timmy and Ziamara for sharing your stories. And for all of our little lobbyists here, can you give them a big round of applause? You guys are doing great. I just want you to know that the work that you are doing is to make it clear how damaging Trump care would be has truly been making a difference. We're here today because we want to make one thing very clear, and that is any Senate Republican who promised to protect people with pre-existing conditions should be right here with these kids fighting back against time to hear what is at stake for those families who've joined us today. They need to make the right choice and take a stand against Trump care and for these kids and families who are with us today. And they need to take a stand against the backroom deals that are now being put in place that they say will allow them to bring this bill forward, because those deals aren't going to benefit these kids that are up here or their families. So what do we think of their bill?
Don't want it.
Don't want it. Excellent. All right. Do it again for him. Say, what do we think of the Trump care bill?
What do you think of the Trump care bill?
On it. All right. Senator Murphy, you want to join me up here? I'm just going to scoot right behind you. I'm going to get over here.
Well, Senator Murray, to the Morrison and Heung families, thank you very much for being here today. These are the faces of what is about to happen to this country if the Republican health bill goes into effect, and if, God forbid, the Cruz and Lee amendment gets adopted. I have 2 young kids. I'm one of the few young parents in the United States Senate. I have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they don't have pre-existing conditions yet. Every family is just 1 minute away from having a diagnosis that you did not expect, that you did not plan for, that you do not deserve. And the whole concept of constructing a compassionate, sensible healthcare system is so that we can provide some sense of solace, some sense of security to families that are dealing with a diagnosis or illness that they never expected when they set out to build a family. The Cruz and Lee amendment, if it's adopted, would set up a 2-tier system. Healthy people would be in one system, and any family with a diagnosis or a pre-existing condition would be in another system. And the insurance in that second system would be totally, completely unaffordable. This is unacceptable to all the Democratic caucus, to many of our Republican friends, and we want to make sure that everybody sees the human face of this bill. Even without the Cruz and Lee amendment, this bill would cut off health care to many of these families. Why? Because the bill would gut Medicaid, which provides the services necessary for many of these kids, and it wouldn't require insurance companies to cover any of the benefits that are most important to these children. So the bill was horrible for children with pre-existing conditions before, and somehow it could potentially get even worse if they adopt some version of the amendment being proffered by Senator Cruz and Senator Lee. So as a young parent, as a parent of young kids, I'm really proud of these families and of these kids to be here with us today to make sure that folks realize this isn't numbers, this isn't about data, this is about real families and real impact. So with that, let me turn it over to Sen. Yeah. So, but we got to do a thumbs down together. So we got to do once again. What do we think of this bill? Thumbs down. Come on up, Senator Hassan.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And to the Heung and Morrison families, thank you for being here. To our youngest citizens who are here, thank you for your patience and your collected and good behavior, which is not easy to pull off. And I want to thank Senator Murray and Senator Murphy, but I really want to thank these families and these young people for being here, because it is your efforts to speak up and talk about your lives and your experiences that really does make a difference. And I will tell you that my 29-year-old son, Ben, has a version of a couple of pieces of this equipment, but his just got refitted on Friday. And after about a 4-hour fitting session with specialists who bring loving care and expertise, Ben is again sitting in a comfortable chair. And the reason I tell you all that story is that what you see here today in terms of the specialty care and equipment that empowers these young people, these Americans, to live the best lives they can and contribute to their communities and to be part of their schools and part of their towns takes a whole lot of people and a whole lot of effort and can be quite expensive. And so we want to make sure that we have a healthcare system that understands that and respects that and empowers these families who are already doing an awful lot above and beyond what typical families do just to get everybody through the day. Just to get everybody here today, I expect, was a bit more of a challenge than even most of us experience with our more typical family members. And I hear similar stories from people all across my home state of New Hampshire. Over 200 people came to a field hearing I held with Senator Shaheen, and over 75 people showed up at a visit to Granite State Independent Living on Monday. All of the stories they told are critical as we work to defeat this truly dangerous bill. Trump Care would be a disaster for families in New Hampshire and across the nation. It would lead to higher costs for much worse coverage. It would create an age tax. It would end Medicaid expansion. It would cut and cap traditional Medicaid, which would jeopardize coverage for children, people who experience disabilities, seniors, and people with substance misuse disorders. It's really important that everybody understand that even when families like ours have private insurance, a lot of the care our loved ones need is covered by Medicaid because private insurance simply doesn't cover all of the specialty care, examples of which you see before you today. The Trump Care bill would also defund Planned Parenthood. And now some on the other side of the aisle are pushing the hardline provisions that Senator Murray and Senator Murphy talked about, provisions from this bill that would make Trump Care even worse. The Cruz amendment, from what has been reported, supported by Senator Lee as well, would serve to completely undermine the Affordable Care Act's protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Their amendment would drive up the cost of comprehensive health insurance coverage that ensures people can get the actual health care that they really need. It would cause both copays and premiums for families who have someone with a pre-existing condition or experience an illness. It would make those costs go up. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation, 1.5 million people with pre-existing conditions could face higher premiums under this amendment. So this provision, this Cruz-Lee amendment, is really like a cruel trick. It would make sure that the very people who need health insurance coverage the most wouldn't be able to afford it. My colleagues are pushing their amendment under the guise of consumer choice, when in reality it would leave those with pre-existing conditions without any choice to get the care that they actually need. Adding this amendment would break a key promise from the administration and many Republicans to protect pre-existing conditions. We should be expanding access and affordability to more Americans, not putting health coverage out of reach for Americans who are vulnerable. At our very core, as Americans, we believe that every single person matters, and if that is the case, then every single person needs to be able to get the kind of health insurance that they need. So even without this dangerous amendment, it's clear that the Senate health care bill can't be fixed. Can't be fixed with the Cruz Lee provision and not with one-off gifts to gain support from other members. So it's time, and it's my hope, that our Republican colleagues stop the partisan gamesmanship here and come to the table in order to build on the progress we've made with the Affordable Care Act and improve it, strengthen it. I encourage all Granite Staters and Americans to continue to speak out against this dangerous legislation, and I urge my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to listen to the voices of their constituents who would be hurt by this legislation. I'll continue to stand up for the people of New Hampshire and Americans to ensure that Trump Care never becomes law, and like my colleagues in the Democratic caucus would so welcome the opportunity to sit down with our Republican colleagues and truly move forward on health care. Thank you very much. And we're going to do a thumbs down. One more. Everybody want to do a thumbs down? All right. What do we think of this legislation? Thumbs down. Okay.
Can you hear Timmy? Can you stand here? Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Morrison, and I'd like to tell you about my son, Timmy, who's right here. Timmy, can you wave to them? He's 6.5. He just finished kindergarten, and he's just like most kindergartners you're going to meet. He loves reading, he loves drawing, he loves playing with and tormenting his little sister, Ivy, who's sitting right here. He can't decide what he wants to be when he grows up. Right now, he's waffling between policeman, firefighter, garbage collector, pirate, and robot repairman. We'll see what he chooses. He plays soccer on a local team, and he rides a scooter just like so many of the other kids in our neighborhood. But in many respects, his life is very different from the other kids in his kindergarten class. For one, he's met more senators than I'm sure the rest of them have combined. But seriously, when the other kids are on their vacation or taking trips to Six Flags, Timmy is spending 10 hours in the car on his way to spend a week in the hospital. When the kids in his class bring a cold to school, he often ends up in the hospital. When he was a toddler and the other kids were going to play dates, he was going to therapy sessions. When he was a baby and the other moms were learning how to change a diaper, I was learning how to change a trach tube. He spent 187 days in 3 different neonatal intensive care units when he was born before we finally brought him home. He spent time in 8 different children's hospitals around the country. We can tell you who's got the best food, by the way, if anyone needs to know. Currently, his medical care is split between Johns Hopkins, the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and Cincinnati Children's in Ohio. He's been under anesthesia 42 times. How many families do you know that have a routine for anesthesia? We do, and I think all of these families do, actually. I think I've signed way more consent forms for surgery than I have for field trips. Before Timmy was born, our insurance policy had a lifetime maximum of $1 million. I remember calling our insurance company when I was pregnant and asking them about the coverage that we had. I'm sure I noticed the $1 million maximum, but I didn't pay any attention to it. After all, $1 million is a lot of money. Timmy was born just 6 days after the first provisions of the Affordable Care Act kicked in. And with that provision came the lifting of the ban on lifetime maximums. Not knowing what we were about to face, I had no idea that day was a watershed moment for our family. You see, Timmy passed that $1 million just before Christmas, his first year. By the time we took him home at 6 months old, his medical bills had come to $2,070,146.94. I have a copy of one bill from one of the 3 NICUs. It's 97 pages long, right here. We moved to Maryland not long after we brought Timmy home, and since we moved here, his medical bills have totaled $1,028,264.67, though I'm sure they've probably gone up since I checked that last night. In all that time, we have been able to keep our insurance. Unlike many of the families in our position, we don't actually have secondary Medicaid. Timmy at law, when Timmy grows up and he's looking for a job of his own, he'll still be able to get insurance. If something happens to me and my husband, he would still be able to get insurance. And even more importantly, that insurance pays for what Timmy needs. Essential health benefits, like the hospital stay a month ago when he caught RSV, habilitative devices like the ventilator, who's named Kent, and the suction machine, who's named Fred, that keep Timmy happy and healthy. Outpatient care from doctors who have saved his life on multiple occasions. Prescription drugs like the antibiotics he takes when he has an infection in his trach. laboratory services like the blood work that we do every several months to ensure that his liver disease is under control. Because of the ban on lifetime limits, Timmy is happy, he's healthy, and his parents are not bankrupt. Because of essential benefits coverage, when he was coughing up blood, I could take him to the emergency room without worrying that I was going to come home to thousands of dollars in bills I couldn't afford. Because of the regulations in the ACA, my son can go to school just like any other kindergartner, and he can come home dreaming of what he wants to be when he grows up. And because of insurance and the fabulous medical care that has given us access to, he gets to grow up. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm here. My name's Elena Heung, and I am here to share a little bit about our story. And this is my daughter right here in the red stroller. Xiomara, she just turned 3 last Friday, and she will be starting school this fall at a special education program in Maryland. And I had promised her that before she started school that we would do something really fun this summer. And neither of us thought that meant lobbying on healthcare and visiting Senate office every day, which is almost every day, which is what we've done this summer. But we've been doing that because we're really concerned about what this healthcare bill, if passed, means for my family, our family, what it means for Xiomara, what it means for all these families here and all the families across the country in our situation. Xiomara has a tracheostomy, and that is how she breathes. She depends on a ventilator to give her additional support. She needs supplemental oxygen. She has a feeding tube to get all her nutrition. She's connected to a pulse ox machine, which you can't see, it's on the back, but it's connected to her 24/7 so that we can monitor her. That's a lot, and we were not prepared for that. I had a great pregnancy, an amazing birth, and 15 minutes after she was born, she was rushed to the NICU and put on 100% oxygen. She was transferred to the cardiac ICU at the local children's hospital the next morning, not even 24 hours old yet. And she remained in the hospital for 5 months and had 3 major surgeries, including her tracheostomy. And as it turns out, she was born with multiple serious health issues, some of them chronic, affecting her lungs, heart, and kidneys. And she's had several hospitalizations since then. So like I said, we were not prepared for that. My husband and I were not prepared for that. We certainly were not prepared for how much everything cost. My husband and I, we both have professional degrees. We have good paying jobs, excellent health insurance, savings in the bank. We're financially responsible. We are very responsible people. We did everything right, and we followed all the rules. And you still can't prepare for something like this. No matter how responsible you are, you cannot prepare for an extra $3 million, which is how much the first several months of Xiomara's life cost. That's $3 million. And so I'm here to say that even if you follow all the rules and do everything right and have amazing health insurance and savings like we do, and you can apply for loans and get family contributions, or depend on the kindness of strangers on online campaigns. You can do every responsible thing you can think of, and there's still no way you could pay for this kind of care without going bankrupt. You cannot prepare for this, and this can happen to anyone. It happened to us. But the good news is I didn't have to worry about bankruptcy because of the protections afforded by the ACA. I didn't have to worry about losing our home or being in financial ruin because there was no lifetime cap. I didn't have to worry about my daughter dying because we didn't have $3 million. I didn't worry about it then, and I worry about that now. I worry with her chronic illnesses and her need for continued medical care. The possibility that lifetime cap's coming back is absolutely terrifying. I worry that her 10 pre-existing conditions that she was born with that might make her uninsurable if we ever lost health insurance. I worry about all of that. And we didn't have to worry about that for 3 years. We didn't. And when you don't have to worry about whether there's a cap on your child's life, and you don't have to worry about discrimination against her pre-existing conditions, what happens is you can focus on your child. And that's what we did. We were able to get her the medical care that she needed, the specialists who helped her. We were able to get the surgeries that she needed. We were able to get the medical equipment she needed, like her ventilator and her oxygen, her feeding pump. all of her trach supplies. We were able to get her the therapies that she needed, her physical therapy, her occupational therapy, her speech therapy, her feeding therapy. And that is what healthcare is all about. That is the point of insurance, to take care of you when the very thing that you cannot prepare for happens. So Xiomara is here today, and she's here today because she had healthcare that didn't put a cap on her medical needs. She gets to be a kid. She gets to go to the playground and story time at the library and play in the kiddie pool. She gets to live at home with her family and watch Sesame Street with her brother. She gets to be a kid who's going to school in the fall. She gets to grow up and she gets to live. And that's what healthcare should be about. For Xiomara, for Timmy, for all of these kids here, for Addison and Piers, and Jackson and Henry and Josephine and Nicholas and Christian and Melanie, who are all here today, $1 million kids, who are just the strongest, most amazing kids you'll ever meet. And they're just kids, and they need health care. So, thank you.
Well, thank you so much to the very brave kids who are here, for fighting on behalf of so many other kids who aren't here, and for all their parents, because I know how hard it is to do this every day and take care of your kids too. This is who we're fighting for. Senate Democrats are fighting back against this horrible Trump care bill that will be so devastating for these families, and with your help, we will defeat this. So thank you all for being here. And we're happy to take any questions. And the kids will be too, actually. All right, well, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you. Give the kids a huge round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Timmy. Really appreciate it. Good job. Thank you so much for all that you were doing. Connecticut, Washington, Josephine, 8 months today. Thank you so much. Thank you. Where are you guys from? We're from Maryland. Yeah. But I have some Connecticut stories that I want to get to.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm just on public radio. I just want to make sure I have your name spelled right.
She doesn't make the other thing very often.
You're like on
She's pretty cool.
Okay, awesome. Wow.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, you're fantastic. No, I can't believe you've been down here so consistently.
7 days.
Really? And where are you guys from? I didn't say
Hi. Samantha McGovern. Josephine.
Hi, Josephine. So well behaved.
She's like, I've been through a lot. Very little faces.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just having to sit through a press conference
Yeah,
is like
I got that.
is a piece of cake.
You don't want blood?
Well, let's see, we don't know